Good old Rocky Top.
Good old Rocky Top.
What we'll do right now was released on Christmas Day of 1967 originally. It's written by Boudreaux and Felice Bryan about a beautiful spot just out of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And on February the 15th, 1982, this song was voted by the General Assembly of Tennessee as one of their official state songs. And we were very fortunate to be the first group to have the first record on this. And since then, it's been recorded over 100 times. We look back on dear old Rocky Top.
Oh, and we look back on what a wonderful last Saturday night it was. Welcome aboard, everybody. Today is October 18th, the year 2022. You're about to listen to Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 626.
We should let everybody know that wasn't scripted either.
It wasn't scripted. I
gave you the lead.
You know me. I know you. It's listen, as a diehard Vols fan, it was a hell of a weekend. I'm not going to spend too long on the game. Really, not too long at all. Because as my high school football coach used to say, when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there. But it was an awesome weekend. And honestly, even if you weren't a Tennessee fan, because most of the text messages I got weren't from Tennessee fans, because I don't know that many of them. They're just from everyone else who hates Alabama. That was all it was. It was like, God, great to see you guys take them down. And what an insane game it was. I mean, it was just insane. Even it was fun to watch. They rushed the field. They ripped down the goalposts. They took them out of the stadium. They dumped them in the river. I mean, it was just like, it was honestly, it's how college football should be. That's how it should be. That's what you should have. That's what should happen in all big games every single year. And then, of course, like the next day, I think we're taking donations to pay for the goalposts. We don't need them, but ones like the final score that we beat them by $16 for 16 years and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's all in fun. I'm pretty sure they've already met the last time I checked, they had raised $80,000 for one goalpost. So, but yeah, listen, it's all about the fun, and that's what this podcast is about as well. So again, if you're your first time tuning in, we appreciate your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe, and just podcasts in general, that your time is very valuable, and we appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We'll do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We'll do race recaps. We'll also do a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk a lot about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I both work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level triathletes looking at their very first 5K or even sprint, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to Kona, and everyone in between. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks, emails, text messages to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our Facebook group, and we'll do that here today. That's Crushing Iron Group. If you want to search them on Facebook, answer one simple question, we'll let you right in. Awesome community and really an outstanding resource. Again, a great resource for beginners, but also the seasoned vet. And it's a great place to participate, ask questions, get answers that hopefully help you avoid some of the many pitfalls that the rest of us have made. And if you can avoid them, you call that a win. And we'll go in there like we are today. Pop in, kind of take the pulse of the community, see what kind of questions or topics you want covered, and do our best to get past at least the third one in the list of like 30 that we usually get. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads, but we do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah. My first thought, man, first of all, I was watching the Badger game. It was right at the same time, so it was kind of a bummer because I really wanted to watch your game, but I was kind of like hoping for some resurgence in our program. But anyway, I caught
got it. You guys won, right?
No, we lost in overtime to Michigan State.
Oh, I must have checked like not the fun. You guys were up in the fourth quarter, right?
I can't remember.
Oh boy, yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah, it was just a not so thing. But anyway, the point is, I could, like you said, man, that was fun. Just watching the end of that game and watching those fans come on the field, and that's just so much fun. It's like, I feel like that's what we want to do in life, is just have fun like that. And there's just so many restrictions on everything, and we always want to hold back and, be careful and blah, blah, blah. But I'm watching that game, and one of my first thoughts, though, was, I wonder if they got a backup goalpost, the way the things are getting delivered now. It's like, how long would it take to get it? But then you know, they're going to have to go over to the local high school and have like a real short one in the end zone next week.
Well, they probably just take them from the practice field. I'm sure got a practice field.
I bet they probably got like a whole, you know, storage room full of posts and stuff like that. But who knows? But I was thinking about that. Like, this is kind of weird. And then they're just carrying it up the side of the stadium. I was like, where's this thing going now? How did they get it out of there?
They did. Took it out and threw it in the river. I mean, last time we did that, I think it was 98 or 99. When we beat Florida, we took him off the field and they like rolled him down Main Street and took him to the bars.
That's better.
And people were like cutting off like pieces of it. No, it seriously was like, you know, it was. And again, then we'll talk about triathlon here in a minute. But
no, this is
just
triathlon.
Like, just from like a fun standpoint, it was like, can you imagine like the parents that had their kids there and the college kids and yeah, I saw a bunch of like, you know, people we knew with their kids that are go to UT. The experience that they had, like rushing the field, lighting up the cigars, having a good time, like they will never. It's a once in a lifetimer.
Oh yeah,
it's a lifetimer. And you could tell like the security guards, like they were like, if we win, like we're not going to stop anybody. We're just going to get out of the way. We're just going to get out of the way. We're going to let people. We're just going to have some fun. And they did. They lit it up. And I loved Heupel's interview. He was getting like mosh pitted, and he was just like, "This is what college football is all about," and it is. It's so true. And I think you get so lost in how serious everything has to be and calculated and restricted and P's and Q's and all kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's a time and place for that, but like the experience is just like, even just watching it on TV, like, you know, I watched it with Hayden and we just went like nuts. And the rushing of the field was honestly just as awesome as the made field goal, because you got to feel like the energy of all the other people. And it was very, very similar to going to like the 9 to 9:30 mark at an Ironman, and it's dark outside and you can hear the noise and everybody's rooting for people, and you can just like, the energy is like palpable. You can feel it. Like I've never gotten chills watching an Ironman and watching people race, like especially as outside of like a few like one-on-one interactions with athletes that I have like on the course that are having amazing days or hard days, whatever it is. But the times I've gotten chills at these races is after dark, and you get the crowd pumping, the music blaring, people coming down there. That's when I've gotten chills. And it's that really like, you could feel the energy of the people around you. And it's really something special. Like, and they do it again, like the 70.3s Ironman races, like you can just feel it. There's something special about that when you allow it to happen. And the same thing was I mean, I think I went back like twice that night and watched the last like 5 minutes. And I didn't even care about the field because I knew what happened. It was like watching everybody rush the field and the interview and the whole field like lit up in cigar smoke. It was really special. But as Heupel says, back to work this week. We got plenty of things to work on.
Yeah, you do. But that's kind of a good analogy, because I think sometimes at those finish lines, it gets kind of wild, you know? I mean, you know, obviously people I don't think really there are getting hammered or anything like that, but like maybe some at the game might have been, but like
dude, they used to at Louisville. Half the people
true at Louisville.
In Louisville, downtown 4th Street Live. And again, if you never got the opportunity to do that race, you missed out, because 4th Street Live at its finest was from like 9:30 p.m. to midnight. It's like halfway inside, halfway outside. You got bars and restaurants lining the finish line. People were just hammered from like 5 o'clock until it was time. People set up shop, athletes coming back. Like that's like the great thing about that venue. The great thing about what that venue was about was because all the athletes wanted to come back, because they could like post up at the restaurants. They could have some post-race beers and just go ballistic. And that's the loudest I've ever heard a finish line was at Louisville, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. People are banging against like the siding on the finish line. They're cheering. And it's amazing feeling. And I really wish I wish all, you know, Ironman finishes were like that, because it really is a truly special environment.
Yeah. And there's just something about the energy of like people were letting go. You know what I mean? It wasn't, we were like, you know, stuck in our like nervous like play. People were just having fun with it, you know, and I think that translates into racing. Like a lot of times we get all serious about everything we're doing out there rather than just going out and racing and letting the body go and whatever. And I I like to see more of movement towards that, where people are just kind of not so uptight about everything, you know. But that was really something to watch, and and they doing the whole post game interview with the field covered, and I remember Wisconsin beat Ohio State about 10 years ago or something. The same kind of vibe on a Saturday night, and the whole post game was full of just people on the field, and all you could see out there the other night was orange and just people just having fun. And what a good thing, man. Let's have some fun at these races, man.
Seriously,
Jesus.
Unbutton it a little bit and have some fun. I mean, honestly, like that's one of the biggest things for all athletes is to quit taking things so damn seriously and just have fun. Like I listened to a podcast interview with Chelsea Sodaro, who obviously was the women's winner of the Ironman World Championships a few weeks ago. And they were talking about her. Basically, she was giving like the race recap. And they're like, all right, tell us about, she was like, well, it was kind of a dream swim. But she was like, I remember it's the most fun I've ever had swimming.
Huh.
She's like, I was just having so much fun. And I was smiling. I was having a good time. And I was like, this is a professional, right? This is a professional athlete who expected to be on the podium, and then ended up winning it in honestly like dominating fashion. But it's just like, and I've heard it before on listening to interviews with other professionals, like talking about how much fun they try to have, how they try to detach themselves from because the pressure's already there, right? And age group athletes are honestly, they're almost worse. Right, they walk around so serious, and with their full gear on, and they don't want to talk to anybody. Got their Beats by Dre on. They're not smiling. They're hardcore. Everything is so damn tense. It's like
it's like they're swimming a 50.
I know. It's like the waiting room for the 50 free at the Olympics. They got their park on. They got their head up, and they're like, it's like, man, like live it up a little bit. Like enjoy yourself. And like we do this for fun, and a lot of times when you make things too serious, you end up, restraining yourself. And you can't let things flow because you're so tensed up from the expectation, the seriousness of the moment. It's like, it really is like, and playing free, right? Playing free and not, so paralyzed that you're going to make a mistake or you're not going to calculate it perfectly. Like you don't want to be reckless, but if you practice the fundamentals enough and frequently enough, then they become a habit. So when you race freely and you race without expectation, it's not like you're going to, go right back to bad habits, right? Because you've ingrained them to where you don't have to think about it anymore. You just play free, right? And again, like going back to football, they use that phrase. I want you flying to the football. Like, don't worry about, staying in your lane or overthinking this. Like, I want you flying to the football. I want you having fun. That's one of the big things Hype was like brought to our program. He's like, come in here and have some fun, and stay focused and stay with, the fundamentals, but come and have some fun. And it's such a great approach to training and letting loose. And again, like, going into even like our first question is very similar to that. Like Tina Brown says, for those of us training for Texas, what's the best way to apply the December rules without jeopardizing the training work we're putting in? I always struggle to find balance during the holiday season. Again, like if it's your first time, listening or haven't listened, when we've gone over December rules, well, I think maybe 2 years ago, we implemented like this list that we call December rules. And it's basically a detachment from the obsession of triathlon. We give our athletes a lot of freedom. We give them a few limits in terms of, you can run extra if you've swam extra and so on, but it's things like this, you have to, read one book. You have to meet a friend for coffee or a beer or whatever. You have to spend more time with family and friends. You have to do something, X, Y, and Z, just to detach and have fun. And I think, going back to this question is, December, if you're training for like an early season full, because we get this question a lot. We have a lot of athletes that have races across the, overseas that are in February, March. You've got January, February, March, almost all. That's 4 months. It's like, if you're worried about losing time, or losing, quote unquote, losing fitness, December rules doesn't mean being lazy, and the off season doesn't mean being lazy. Like, I think that's like a huge misconception, that, and you and I both try to like really drive this home with the athletes is like off season and flexibility doesn't mean lazy. Right. It just means being flexible, right. And having more fun. Like I've instructed like quite a few athletes this coming week, like go out for a bike ride, but put your watch in your back pocket, like look up Look around you. Look at the fall colors. Enjoy yourself on a bike ride. Enjoy being on a bike, right? And love riding a bike versus attaching it to, a predetermined workout. Re-energize your soul. Re-energize your mind. Re-energize your body. Like, how is that not gaining fitness? It's like, if anything, December rules is the best time for an athlete doing a race like Texas, because you're about to do mid to late January, and then especially February, March, and then in April, look at 2.5 months of like really hard Ironman training in the worst time of year to do it. Unless you live in like Florida or California or Texas, like that's a hard time of year. Most of your stuff's inside. It's cold. Like, you're going to need the biggest, deepest reservoir of mental and emotional freshness to go into something like that, right? Because you're gonna wake up and it's gonna be dark. You're gonna go to bed and it's gonna be dark, right? You're gonna have dinner and it's gonna be dark. It's depressing, right? February and March is like the time of year where we both see athletes like really struggle with like seasonal depression and being inside and all the darkness. You're not getting enough vitamin D. Like, December rules is honestly like peak phase for mental and emotional training. It's to basically, look at it this way. In off season, again, isn't a time to be lazy, because that's not filling your cup. That's draining it. And it's also, turning your 2-gallon cup into the size of a shot glass. But it's a time to fill your cup, right? Go out with friends, go on group rides, go on group runs, hop in and swim with friends, like where you're not having to worry about the exact workout you got to do, the exact pace, the exact time, the exact thing, or feel like you're failing. Like, that's a huge thing. If anything, it should be re-energizing and make you want to do more, not be lazy and feel like you should do less.
Yeah. And I talked about it a few weeks ago, but man, this is for me, what's happening right now is I'm really having a fun time without structured workouts, but working on things that I want to work on and getting better at them, and but without pressure, and also a lot of that is, like yesterday I got on the treadmill and I was like, I just want to run free today. And it was really interesting because I was super relaxed. I had no agenda. I didn't even know how long I was going to run for. I knew I was going to maybe like 20, 30 minutes or something, just a short run. And it just felt really good. And I didn't look at anything. And I looked at my heart rate later and it was like way down. And I was actually running pretty well, I thought. So I think that those are the things, right? Where you don't have to go like forever. You need to just kind of go in there and because we were talking about it earlier, having fun and being relaxed. I think that's a legit skill to develop in this sport. And if you can work on that now without the pressures of actually having to nail workouts all the time and, report back with like, well, whatever, and just like kind of go out and kind of work on your mind-body connection and being able to let go and run freer or ride freer, swim freer. That's the thing about, you mentioned Chelsea had a most fun swimming, and this was my most fun swim too. And I think it's exactly because of what you said. I worked on it beforehand enough where it just became sort of a natural instinct more. And to me, that's what swimming, for most of you people probably listening out there, is probably lacking. It's that, you didn't start swimming until you're older, like me, and you wonder why your form is kind of goofy. Well, you have to, just work on it and bake it in to the point where it just comes natural. And like, I'm talking to you who grew up swimming, that comes supernatural to you. But most people haven't got that work throughout their lives. And now they're, going to the pool maybe once, twice a week or whatever, and swimming a little bit or whatever. But it takes a long time, I think, I think most people probably didn't, grow up cycling like competitively or running either. And I think a lot of people get in the sport because they want to keep doing something in life and they wonder why it's so hard. And I do too, but I do believe that if you can get it to a point where it feels natural and you can that's repetition, right? So it's a fine line, I think, between going out and just kind of doing the same thing you've always done. And it's one thing to be in the ballpark and doing that, but I also think it's a great time to just sort of like work on those little things in that form that you can't seem to get when you're going out and doing, 2-hour runs or 4-hour bikes. And because the objective is different. You know what I mean? You're trying to finish and feel good, but like if you can get your body in a repetitive cycle that makes things feel easier right now, I think that's a huge win. Just keep moving.
One of the biggest things, like, and I think this has come to like shock people as coaches when you're like, I want a drill sergeant. When they're like, half the battle of coaching is getting athletes in some ways to not give a fuck, to go out and enjoy themselves and have fun and just be able to rip it when they want, right? And just and feel it and love it. And because if you can do that, you're going to do more of it, right? And you're going to do it more often. You're going to do it for longer. Like we had arguably one of our best racing weekends of the year this last weekend. And one of the themes to like some text messages, I sent out, and I'm sure you did too, like before these races, was I just said, I want you to rip it today. These are like 70.3s and fulls. It was like, rip off the Band-Aid. Don't calculate it. Don't think it through. Just rip it. Just rip it. And sometimes you just have to, like athletes can be so calculated, it just paralyzes your ability to perform because they think they're everything. You're not having fun. Love it. Like, and you can't love things that are, I'm sure you can to an extent for some people. Like we work with quite a few engineers and they get like, they have happy hour, like doing spreadsheets and, drinking soda water, and they got their, protractors out, and like, that's a good time for them. But for most of y'all, you need to just like go out and live a little and have some fun and maybe even not have a plan for when you go out for a run, right? Like, go out like, sometimes it's like, it's really interesting when you give an athlete like, all right, go out and run, 30 to 45 minutes as you feel. Well, what's that? What does that mean, coach? What's that mean? Like, what do you mean? What does that mean? Like, go out and like, you got to feel, you got to learn yourself. You got to learn to enjoy things and also not be so obsessed with, the fact that like, oh, this could ruin everything. I went zone 3 today on that. Oh, I think it ruined everything. No, it didn't. Like, no big deal, or like the attention, the over attention to detail where, you get an athlete and like, yeah, I missed, sorry, coach, I missed like that last 100. I thought it was this. I'm like, I don't care. Like, that's not going to mean anything. It's like, have some fun with the things that you do, and when you do that, you can probably do this next question better, which is from Roy. How to go hard. When it's time to go hard? Parentheses, race day or top of a build phase, maybe. You and I talk about this all the time off the air. How to go hard is something that's up to the athlete. That's your choice. It's your choice. You have to be able to push yourself. And if you don't, then you're and again, two things happen when you work with an athlete. One is they have to trust you when it's time to go hard. And then they have the responsibility to go hard when you ask them to, because they need to trust that going that hard is going to be good for them, but they actually have to go hard enough. And athletes either go one way or the other. They either go too hard when you ask them to go easy, or they go too easy when you ask them to go hard. And, I think most people probably go too hard when you ask them to go easy, and that's their biggest problem. But athletes are usually more capable and more likely to execute a workout if they believe it's the right kind, right? They believe it's the right time of intensity. It's the right length. It's the right duration. It's not too much. It's not for too long. They think they can do it. Yeah, they need to be challenged, but not to the point of like surrender, One work every once in a while, it should be like a failure workout, like every few months, not every week, every few months, where it's like you really, really, really push, an athlete to see where they're at. Because a lot of times you're not trying to see where they are physically. You're testing to see what they have mentally, right? Can you go one more? Like there's a workout that I give that I'm not going to tell anybody that I give because it'll just kind of, it's not a secret workout, but for the athletes, like it's more of a mental test. But you can see when an athlete caves, and they'll often tell you, like, I know I had one more. I just couldn't hold on to it today. And it's a great way to test like mental toughness, because your mind is almost always going to give up before your body. I mean, you see it all the time in professional racing and in age group racing. I'm dead. I got nothing left to give. I'm going to walk the last 4 miles of the marathon. 500, half mile from the finish, you see the crowd roaring, boom, fastest split, last half mile, right? Yeah. You got it in you. You just don't have the ability and the resiliency to dig deep, And that's something that comes with two things. One, comes with practice, right? It comes with practicing being resilient and not giving up and not bailing on a workout, not being afraid to fail, right? But it also comes with having enough of a reserve, like going back to December rules, to where you haven't dug yourself deep and burnt yourself out and done these epic workouts every week after week till you become resistant to doing it because you know how bad it sucks, right? Like that's the one thing about like once you've really dug deep and like raced a race perfectly. Like I remember talking to Sean Sanford, one of our athletes who finished Madison. He was like bent over, like almost needing medical attention. He was like, but he was so happy. And I was like, there you go. You've gone and done it. Now this is going to be the one that you chase because you paced it so well. You were hurting so bad at the finish line. You extracted every last ounce of ability you had for you today. But now the problem is like when you go back and do it again, if you do it too soon, your body's like, whoa. And no, it's like, touching a hot stove. It's like, whoa, no, I don't want to go there again. That did not feel very good. Mm-hmm. And even your mind's like, I don't want to do that either. And so you hold it back in. So don't do it enough, but do it just enough in training to where you're not burning the match. You're just striking it, but it's a test and ultimately it's the athlete's responsibility. You have to know that about yourself. Are you a person that's willing to go hard and do the work, or are you more likely to do less of it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you said it. A lot of times that's just about practice and really paying attention to what's going on, because I probably would guess that most people in triathlon, for example, don't go hard enough on the bike, or they don't test. I mean, I think that's a hard one for people to gauge. I suppose, if you really are dialed in on your testing and your power and stuff, you kind of know, but still, even we've seen people do a lot of tests like at the old hub, and I don't, people get done and it's like, maybe I had some, like finding that spot is very difficult. But you gotta practice, you gotta push at it. And that's the thing is like with the bike, it's like, I always feel like there's something more in there. And then when you start realizing it, what that feels like, and you've been there and you can keep going. But with the run, sometimes I think that, we talk about go hard on the run at certain times. And I'm always just cautious with people. It's like, that is got to be relative to where you're at, so I don't know. Like I like to do stuff like right now, what I'm doing on the treadmill is just inching things up just a little bit here and there and kind of trying to keep I know I'm big on this, but like keeping that same flow and that relaxed stride and doing that whole thing. And then just going a little bit faster and a little bit faster and seeing how that feels and how can I hold it. And you talk about like in the pool a lot is just go as hard as you can hold form, because the minute you start going all over the place, it's kind of in some ways a lot of counterproductive. And so just, you gotta toy with it, it's like, I would say the workout's there, but you gotta kind of start to figure out how to use them and what it means to you every time you go on there, because people are different. And, if you didn't grow up riding hard and climbing hard and all these kinds of things, you need to learn what that feels like. You need to learn the limits of your body a little bit better. And it's just sometimes that's one thing I find with people is that they have a hard time figuring that out on the bike. And it's usually they got way more than they think, because it's like you start to feel it. Yeah. But it's amazing how once you start pushing those limits, that those limits become easier and easier as you get, more into training. And it's just it's just something you got to really kind of deal with and figure out on your own. What are your limits and how can you push them a little harder? It's just, I don't know. I always talk about it. It's like in a game, like that game the other night, the Tennessee stuff is, I'm sure those guys are just absolutely tired, but how do you find that one more shot? I talk about one more time. It's like you probably had that a million times in swimming growing up. It's like, all right, one more. Mm-hmm. One more. I can't do it. Yeah, you can. One more. And that's how you discover that you can go one more. And at certain times, obviously, it's you're just gonna crash. But I just think you need to create that experience, and a lot of times that's on yourself.
A lot of people, most people, and many athletes they're just afraid to fail, right? Like it's a lifetime indictment that you failed, right? Oh, I failed in this workout. You learned something, mm-hmm. right? We always learn. And athletes almost are like afraid to learn. They'd rather not perform to their best of their abilities, or just control themselves at 80% than really ever figure out what their 100% is. Because like, who cares if you failed in the workout? At least you learn. Hopefully, you learn from it. If you do it again next week, then then we're failing again. Like, we need to figure something out. But you hopefully learn from it. Learn to pace better, right? Learn to sleep better. Learn to eat and fuel. Like, have this conversation. I'm like, stop telling me your legs are fried from cycling. Have you been eating enough? No. Sleeping enough? No. Drinking enough? No. Then it's not the cycling, it's you, right? You're making bad decisions. So you can either keep cycling like shit, or you can choose to take care of yourself. Like, because that's continual failure, right? Like, I use the same analogy when people talk about being injured. Because I think it's a frame of mind, because athletes get so caught up, and I'm just really injured and I can't really do anything. And, and they just use that as an excuse to do nothing, right? From the moment of injury, you can either choose to stay injured or start recovering from it. You get two choices, right? Stay injured or start making a plan to get back. And the sooner you make a plan to get back, the sooner, and that's a mindset, right? And it's a healthy one. You know what I mean? Like, you've got athletes who will stump their toe and be like, yeah, I think I got to take 2 days off. Like, I'm just really not, I don't want to set myself back. And I'm like, go run. I can go run. You stumped your toe, and then or you have athletes who are like, yeah, I think I need to take a week or 2 off just to be safe, and then you get athletes, like, an athlete who got who had someone pull out in front of them. They had a bike wreck, ER visit on Saturday. Just beat up bad. He texted me yesterday, hey man, went for a walk around the block today. It didn't feel great. Showering is excruciating. But it'll be a long road back, but it'll make, next year, this and this be that much sweeter. Got up and went for a walk after a really bad bike wreck. And then you got other people who they just will stay injured. And yeah, some of you don't have a choice, like you're in a walking boot, but do other things, like be active, make a choice to progress. Don't, because go so in love with stagnation and sitting in one place. And it's just, figure it out, and at least be proactive. It might not make you physically better the next day. You're not going to go from being on crutches to running 5 miles, but mentally you'll be in it because let's be honest, a lot of athletes, that find themselves injured like to stay injured because they won't do anything. They won't be proactive to figure it out. They just say, I'm just injured a lot. I stay injured. I'm like, well, yeah, you should never stay injured. You should get better, learn your lesson, and move on. That's part of it. Susie, Shane, if you know you are only marginal in one discipline, swimming, and you've tried hard to improve over many years but haven't, should you really focus on the 2 disciplines that are your strength to improve your overall position within an age group? And no, I'm not saying completely ignore the weakness. This is an excellent question. And one that, I think everyone asks at some point, in their life. And one of the biggest reasons, first thing, whether it's biking or running, we use swimming as an example here because that's what she asked. And a lot of you, it is swimming. The first thing you should ask yourself is, why am I not getting any better? Why am I not improving? What am I doing? I'm doing this, and this, and this, and it's obviously not working. And the next question is, am I willing to do what it takes to make it work and to improve? And most athletes aren't. That's just a fact. They bemoan about being slow in the pool, but they only want to swim 1 speed. They aren't fast enough in open water, but they only want to do 2,000 easy every time they get in the pool and swim it straight. And they also don't want to swim from October, November, December, and January. Right? And they're like, what do you expect? What do you expect if you, I know this is meant a harsh 2 comments, but that's just reality. If you want to get better at something, again, they're talking about, I was listening to a post kind of recap of Lionel Sanders talking about how his swim is like fallen so far behind. And the thing is like, if you want to be a better swimmer, you have to let go of your 2 other strengths. You can't swim hard enough to get better, to get better enough if you are always fatigued from running and riding. But that's super hard to do, especially if they're your strengths. So you're like, oh, but what if I lose fitness, right? And the way you should think about it, especially if it's swimming, is that if you think you're a strong biker and runner right now, think of what happened if you were a strong swimmer, right? Think about coming out of the water faster and fresher and not like you haven't swam. And being able to bike harder and run harder, it gets domino effect. But the thing is, you have to take time away from your cycling and running to get an extra swim a week, right? Or to reduce intensity in cycling and running so you can swim harder, right? So you can go from, swimming all out hundreds at from a 2 minute, and then reducing cycling and running intensity. So, but now you can swim it really, really hard with more rest at 150, right? That's how you get times to drop. Like people are always willing to do that in cycling and running. But it comes to swimming, you're not willing to do it. And you're going to continue to see this, especially if you watch professional races. Like if you can't swim front pack, your day's over. It's over. And it's the same thing with age groupers now. Like gone are the days where you can bike your way up to the front. People pay attention to swimming now. People pay attention to it because it's important. And so if you're a person, if you're an athlete that struggles swimming, like I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Ask yourself, back at what you've been doing and then analyze and write down why it hasn't worked and then what you're actually willing to do to change it, right? Like you're willing, because anyone can make a plan, right? Like a lot of athletes, can write their own plan. Yeah, they got 16 hours this week. Is that reasonable? Like, I know you want to do 16 hours this week, but you haven't done 16 hours a week in the last 2 months. So is it reasonable? Make an actual plan that you're going to stick to, right? If you say you're going to swim 4 times a week, commit to swim 4 times a week. If you know you're not, then swim longer when you go, longer and harder. You got to find more time, right? And that means less time running and less time cycling. But the biggest thing is asking yourself and being objective. All right, what I've done hasn't worked, right? And plus, you have the benefit of swimming is great fitness transfer because you're working anaerobic. You're doing a whole body workout with no impact. And it's a great time of year for athletes to continue to work on their swim if you're willing to work on it and actually figure out what it is that you've been missing.
Mm. Well, as a person who kind of has been that person my whole triathlete life, I mean, I've had times when I felt like I was getting decent at swimming or whatever, but now is what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing right now. Cause I feel like the harder I work on it going into Ironman Wisconsin and now carrying it forward and keeping working with it, that's back to what I was saying earlier about how it becomes instinctual more so. And one of the things I've always been fascinated by with swimming is they talk about that swimmer flexibility. And you know what I'm talking about. And people are like, oh, they're just very limber. But yeah, they're limber within the move of the stroke. And that's been one of the things I've been really thinking about as we talk about swimming long and strong. And I've really been working on that with like alternating paddles a lot and things like that. And really just because like if you feel like that long reach, and some of us just have tight, shoulders and backs and necks and all that kind of stuff, but like to work on that sort of flexibility and that idea of really reaching from the whole body and from the toes and all that. And kind of, I just think that takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work. And then you look in the pool or you go in the pool and you're like, yeah, I'm getting faster. I just cut 2 seconds off 100. That just feels like, that doesn't feel like a lot, but I think a lot of times we're not looking at it in the right perspective. We got to think about it like exactly how you were saying. You get out of you might cut a little time off and then also feel fresher. So what does that mean? It means you're probably just in stronger, better swim shape, and maybe you're developing a little more of that flexibility and the ability to kind of just flow through the stroke. And those are the things that I think are right now, for me at least, that makes a lot of sense, because if I can get kind of that going and really ingrain it in my body and my mind, what that feels like, I should be able to kind of pick it up a little quicker. I think that's the thing too, right? We go through the triathlon and we learn things. It's just like a lot of times it just takes going through races to learn things, right? I've done, many races and like 70.3s and stuff for sure. I've just learned things. And then the next time I go in there, it's just sort of instinctual and I know it. I don't have to think about it as much. And I think a lot of times that's where we get faster too, is just by experiencing. And we were talking about with riding, and you just have to learn on yourself, like push yourself into these situations that remind you of the race or feel like a race, and just kind of slowly indoctrinate your body with these ideas and these feelings and things like that. And that's how you get faster over time. But I guess in short, I mean, if Yeah, if you're just going into the pool and just kind of swimming the same way for the hour and a half, and it feels like you're not getting any faster, that's definitely, you got to kind of step back and think about what you need to do to change that, because that's not going to be the way. It never does. I mean, you can maybe get a little stronger, more comfortable, which is important too, but I think getting faster in swimming is very hard, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's hard and it takes a long time, and you got to do it right. You can't mindlessly go, which is what people like to do. They don't want to think. They want to mindlessly go. So just be honest with yourself about, the changes you're willing to make, and then make them. Go for it. Again, like something extra isn't going to hurt anybody. And so do it and get better at it. Roy asks again, most predictable spots for improvement for an ultra marathon runner doing tries. Yeah, and Tiffany Lance kind of dittoed that. Below that, very relative in terms of the question. Most predictable spots for improvement for an ultra. I mean, most of the time it's going to be in swimming, because that's the thing most people just struggle with. That's your biggest area of improvement. But again, just because you're an ultra marathoner doesn't mean this is no offense, I'm not saying you aren't because I don't know you, but just because you're an ultra marathoner doesn't mean you're a fast runner. It just means you have it just means you can run, walk, hike for long periods of time, and you have a pretty awesome mental and emotional fortitude, which is an amazing skill to have. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're like a super fast runner. So I wouldn't say not to work on your running. However, I would say that is some of the best success that I've ever had with athletes that I even think like the last 4 athletes we've had that qualified for Boston last year all did a 70.3 like 6 to 9 weeks beforehand. I have found 70.3 training and then the race to be about as good of a lead up as you can have, right? You're dispersing run volume with cycling and swimming. You're still getting anaerobic benefit. You're getting a whole body workout with swimming, right? And you're able to work, really, really hard and increase your VO2 max or your threshold with cycling, that it also improves your running without risking the added intensity plus the added mileage of marathon running, which is how most people get injured. I would say every single professional marathon runner has gotten injured or gets injured at least once every 2 years, if not more. And it's because it's such a fine line. It's so hard in your body. Again, ultra marathon, same thing. Like you're on your feet a lot. But yeah, I would go swim and ride a lot, and maybe remove all intensity from running and just swim hard and bike hard, because you're getting a ton of aerobic work in running. It's where you probably already have a giant aerobic base. But there's even some, 50 milers, 100 milers. I've got an athlete training for a 100 miler in 3 weeks, and she's usually like in the top 5. Unless the course is like incredibly technical and like quad crunching, and a lot of it's really like run your fastest marathon, like be in the best marathon shape you've ever been in and be strong. And you're probably in a good space to run like a 50 mile or 100 mile. Cause let's be honest, you're not going to run all of it. Like unless you're professional, even the professionals will hike some of it. But yeah, change things up a little bit, give your body, your ligaments, your skeletal system, your tendons, give them a rest, add in like a one long run, like every other week, and keep it fresh and let your body recover some, because it's a beating. Time on your feet can be a beating. And that's also why it can be really, really challenging for ultra marathoners, 50Ks, 50 miles, 100 to get fast, is because they usually are doing so much volume, or they're trying to do so much volume that they can't run hard enough to get faster. It's the same thing for athletes that do Ironman after Ironman or after Ironman. I'm like, at some point, if you really, really want to get faster, you got to go back to the Olympic, get fast first. Because then it takes you less time to do 70.3s, and it takes you less time to do 70.3s. It's probably gonna take you less time to do a full, But that's hard to get people to go back to doing that. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have that same feeling. I probably need to go back to go forward. Let me ask you this: have you been thinking you got that ultra itch lately?
Not really.
I
mean, frankly, I need an itch. Period. Right now, I rode and ran yesterday, but yeah, I've been really well moisturized lately. I've had not
no
much of an
itches.
itch.
Oh man,
Listen. I'd be
get
lying
it.
if I said I didn't get it. Yeah, I get it this time of year every year. I get it this time of year every year because it's my favorite time of year to run. And it's hard to live and breathe your profession, your job, and your love and your hobby all at the same time. It's like sometimes you want to just like distance yourself from it and have something that's just like, not what you do, kind of a little bit of disassociation. This is always the time of year that I kind of go through that, like, hey, I'd love to do something like that at some point. I always get that itch this time of year, just I think mostly because of the weather, just because I love running in the cold. And there's just something refreshing about it. But I've done it, I think every year, almost every other year, this time of year, I pretty much just give up biking and run a lot. And then when I get back in good shape, like it's still there, like it takes me a little bit to get it back, but have I stayed on trend and peaked, performance-wise in my life at a 70.3 distance? No. But am I that far off? Probably. No. And guess what? I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm still doing it. So like I'm not burnt out. I'm hanging in, and that's the big thing for athletes is like, we've got a lot of athletes who have transitioned to, I got an email from an athlete this morning who started with me doing triathlons and I work with quite a few just like ultra marathoners, 100-miler, 50Kers. He's like, all right, I'm going back, and he's doing Black Canyon, 100K in I think February. He's like, going back for revenge. Some people need that in their life, right? We go back to the beginning of the podcast and we talked about having fun, right? And you can choose experiences and endeavors over expectations and times. And sometimes people need that. They need that period of disassociation. Like that's why I think swim run events become so popular, endurance swim events, like you and I both, we always encourage athletes to step outside the box, right? Don't call yourself a triathlete. Just call yourself an endurance athlete, or just honestly, just call yourself an athlete, period. Right? Because once you start calling yourself only a triathlete, you're like, I can't go do that. Like I think if I like go back you want to be a Swiss Army knife, right? Because everyone's had one and everyone keeps one, right? For the most part, it's like you have that, and it's like I think we have athletes we did Leadville mountain bike race, we did gravel stage races, got a girl doing English Channel this year. You got gravel races, endurance races, cycling stage events, 50Ks, triathlon, sprints, Olympics. Guy to want to do an ultra in 2 years. We had ladies do Deccan Ironman last year. It's like you can do all these things. I think people are so concerned with what's going to set them back, like in 1 year, versus what could propel them forward for the next 5. And a lot of times that means disassociating from what you want to do the most all the time, because eventually that river's going to run dry. And the best way to have it is to have multiple rivers, just deviate, here and there and fill one up and drain the other one, fill one up and drain. But if you only got one, that's a lot of stock to put in one. And so, yeah, it is. It's a good way to be. It's a good option to have. Endurance sports is great to have options in terms of being flexible, because in most of the sports don't offer that, right? Football, basketball, hockey. I mean, it's like all those, you play it or you don't. You play it or you don't. But going back to like being a multiple, like the best, they always say like the best athletes played multiple sports in elementary, middle school, high school. No one did they didn't specialize, right? And it's really interesting because if you look at like some of the biggest burnout, not failures, but like biggest burnout flakes, or never met expectations, were almost always, outside of like LeBron James, outside of, but you like golfers and like Freddie Adu is a soccer player. You see it in tennis all the time too, is like the next, like they're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, the next big thing. They were the next big thing until they turned 18. And then they just slowly slowly became not like the next big thing. And then you see people come out of nowhere to be the best players in the world, right? Best athletes in the world. And you're like, hey, so what'd you do? Like, well, I didn't play football till I was a junior in high school. They're playing in the NFL. I played basketball and then I picked up, football my senior year. Or you played, a lot of different sports growing up and then just, picked one. It's like, variety is so great from a sport because it teaches you. They all teach different lessons and they teach different things. Like you and I talk about this at all the time with our athletes specifically is mountain biking and trail running, two things everyone should do right now. Mm-hmm. Everyone, if you have one, or you don't, if you don't have a mountain bike or a fat bike, tell your somebody other listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. We suggest that mountain bikes and fat bikes will drastically improve the mood of your significant other by a ton. So it's worth it. Let them get a new bike, but go outside, enjoy it. Like, don't be on the trainer this time of year and for every single session and crush yourself. Hop on a mountain bike with no goal but to go ride. It'll increase your bike handling skills. It'll keep you having fun on your bike. And if you're having fun on your bike, guess what? You're going to bike more, right? Yeah. And same thing on a fat bike. Like, go out and do that. Just have fun being outside on your bike. You're gaining fitness. Same thing with trail running. I can't trail run. I've got weak ankles.
Yeah.
Or you have weak ankles because you don't trail run, right? Or because all you do is run, at 5.5 on your treadmill 3 times a week with no northeast, south, and west. And all of a sudden you take like one hop, skip, and a jump off a 2-inch curb and you've all of a sudden fractured your lower leg. It wasn't the curb's fault, and it wasn't because you're injury prone. It's because you haven't done the things required to strengthen your lower limbs, like trail running. Be athletic. It's so much fun, and it's so good for you. And that was a really long-winded answer.
Wow. Yeah. I've always been one of these guys that, it's hard for me to get out the door. I mean, I think a lot of us struggle with that, but I wouldn't have done Ironman Wisconsin this year if I didn't start mountain biking in the summer. It just wouldn't have happened. It got my interest back. I felt good. I was enjoying it. And then I got into training, and that was probably some of the most fun I had training for Ironman this year. And it goes all the way back to when I was late 40s and super out of shape. I decided I was going to start running. I did a 5K, and then I started running a lot, and I was like, shit, this hurts, man. I couldn't get unsore. I kept pushing because I wanted to get in shape and everything. But then I got into triathlon, and that was the cross training I needed. It opened a whole new world. And then eventually I was like, shit, I need to cross training. And that's where it is. I think that's what has to happen for people. A lot of times it's very difficult to just, like you said, get on a trainer, get to the pool, run the thing. But it helps to get out there and get some diversity in your training and, get new skills and develop more muscle coordination in different ways and things like that. And that's to me, I think, the key to longevity in the sport, to be honest.
When you start to force things, you become more resistant to it. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar to this, and we can end it on this one, and we will get the rest of these questions on Thursday. There's a lot of really great questions left that are very in tune with this time of year. He's not an athlete who is just kind of getting back, went through a big move, big transition, in life and didn't train for, probably close to like 2 months. And they're doing a 70.3, in just, I think, December. And this morning they're like, yeah, I just did my swim and then I just hopped in the trainer, and at the 31 minutes, it was like, I'm not really sure if 31 minutes amounts to anything, but, I did it. And I wrote back, I was like, well, 31 minutes is better than 0. Always. Yeah. And the biggest boost you get isn't from fitness. It's from behavior. It's from creating a pattern, right? And the intention of, I want to get better. And I'm willing to find the time to do extra things. If you force on athletes, every time I've had an athlete say, I just don't really want to ride right now. Okay, don't ride your bike. I don't give a shit. It's not like our relationship is going to change if you don't do bike workouts. I'm really just feeling like running right now. Let's do it. There's probably 10 athletes I work with now that just run that started out as triathletes. Like, I don't have the time for it. It didn't fit well in my life. I just want to run. Then let's do it. Right. Because if you keep forcing them or saying, hey, you've got to do this. No, you don't. We're adults. Right.
Yeah.
We don't have to do anything. right? You don't have to do any of this, but you don't have to be all or nothing. And that's the big problem athletes have, is like, they don't want to do anything. And even going back to like the question you asked me, like going back to the periods of time that I chose to just run, I might not have been cycling and swimming, but when I got back in, because I wasn't forcing it, but when I got back into cycling and swimming, my run fitness was there, and I still had pretty good fitness. And I already had the habit and the behavior of adhering to a plan and doing something versus doing nothing. That's your ability to hang around. Right? Hang around right now. Tread water right now. Dip your toe in the baby pool right now, but don't go sit on the lounge chair for 5 months. Right? Do a little bit of this, do a little of that. Don't hop on the platform and do a cannonball on the deep end. It's not time for that kind of training yet. Do it a little bit, and don't do things. And honestly, for the most part, don't do things you don't want to do. Sometimes, you got to force yourself to do it and you'd be glad you did it. But the more you do that, the more oftentimes you're going to hate it. Right? Like no one goes to a job that loves it every single day and all of a sudden wakes up and they're like, I hate my job. No, they hate going to work every single day. And finally they just have enough of it and they quit. Same thing goes with training, right? You force yourself and people ask all the time, hey coach, just give me a little bit of time, go for it. Take all the time you need, right? Hopefully not going anywhere, forever in the next week or two. So take all the time you need, right? And be ready when you're ready. And that's just a huge thing for athletes, that they overkill it and they burn themselves out. And then it's not triathlon. It's not training. It's what they do, right? It's what they do. They don't know they take things too seriously. They don't know when to say when. They overcommit. They don't know how to say no. They do it to themselves, right? And the biggest skill you can learn for athletes is treating yourself with respect, showing yourself a little bit of grace, having some fun, doing things you don't normally do, keep things fresh, right? Do something, and eventually you'll come back. You'll get the bug again. You'll find time to do it again. And maybe you won't, but you have a better shot at doing it long term if you're the more flexible you are.
Couldn't agree more, man.
Couldn't agree more. That's all we got. We do have we should have led with this. We're the worst. We do have our November 1st. We'll open up we do have our Ironman Wisconsin and Wisconsin 7.3 training camp. That's going to be August 3 through 6. We'll have details on that on the website. We also have our race-specific plans. They go on sale and will be live November 1st. You can find those. We'll link to some, put a link in the show notes around November 1st for those. Again, that's mapping out your big race of the year: Ironman Chattanooga, Ironman Texas, Ironman Wisconsin, and then we'll also do Chattanooga 70.3, Des Moines 70.3, and Madison 70.3. And if you're not doing those races, they are specific to the course. But again, you can pick, if you're doing a flat course or rolling course that you find similar, hop in and you can pick one of those, because we're also going to be doing monthly Zoom calls for the group. They're very educational in nature, and also answering some questions at the end. Just talk a lot about training in general, base, build, peak, testing, race specific phase, all that kind of stuff. So not only is it a great opportunity to get a great, very well built and thought out training plan for your big race, but it's also a great chance to learn. If you want to be coach yourself in the future, or honestly have any interest in being a coach in the future, it'll be a great resource for you to have to learn a lot, do some stuff on your own, and have a great race. So we'll have those online coming November 1st, but that's it. And the rest of our stuff's on our website, c26triathlon.com. It is a one-stop shop for all things coaching camps and community. If you have any questions for Mike, he's available, crushingiron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, my man.
All right, man. See you Thursday.